Okay, so I've already done a body transformation video, which will be linked here, but this is going to be basically a really abridged version of that, and I'm going to touch on a few points that I didn't touch on in that other video. And at the end, I'm going to go over everything I've learned. Well, not everything I've learned, but quite a lot of things that I've learned along the way that'll help you with your own journey, so that way you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. So in 2013, this was technically when I started, and I started due to a relationship breakup, the classic reason why a lot of us get into this. And I was kind of gymming before this, but I didn't care much. Now, looking back, I pretty much only had like 2 total gym sessions. And I remember this because one of them, I told my then girlfriend at the time about it, and she was pretty shocked because, I'm a little skinny boy, I don't work out, that's not a thing. And the second one was probably after her mum made some comment on how skinny I was, which is, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And there was a little bit of gym during like PE class, but a lot of us were just sort of messing around. Obviously that doesn't really count. So as for my training in 2013, it was just purely isolations, which is single joint movement. So that's where you just use your tricep or just your bicep in a movement, for example, as opposed to like the bench press where you incorporate your pecs, your triceps, and your anterior deltoid into the one exercise. But that'll be elaborated on later. But what you need to know for the time being is that isolations aren't the best way to grow. Compound movements are the way. Isolations definitely have their place, but the fact that I didn't even know what a compound movement was back then just shows how little progress was being made. That all-purpose machine, so what that is, that's that little, well, I guess all-in-one machine. You'll find it at places like Rebel Sport or just any sort of fitness, I guess, shop. It's where you can do like your pec deck, you can do like some sort of chest press, you can do a lat pull down, you can do a leg extension, and sometimes it'll have a cable on the side for you to do like rows and bicep curls on. It's one of those ones, so we had that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had, just that machine and dumbbells that went up to 7 kilos. And we didn't even have the 7 kilo dumbbells to start with. We actually bought that halfway through the year, because the 5 kilo dumbbells I had, I started to get pretty strong. Well, I started to be able to do a lot more reps on those, so I was like, I need to up the weight. Now, I didn't know what progressive overload was back then either, so basically that's just a fancy way of saying lifting more over time, which is one of the main reasons as to why you grow. Didn't know what that was, but I noticed that my biceps were starting to grow a bit now that I could curl a bit more weight. And I didn't even think to apply that to any other movement, just, oh yeah, biceps are growing because I can curl more. So yeah, very dumb on my part. Now, protein equals chicken breast from deli, lol. Yeah, so I worked in a deli at the time. I still kind of do. But my definition of getting more protein was eating about 50 to 100 grams of the deli chicken breast every now and then. That's like 20 grams of protein extra twice a week, maybe? Like, that's nothing. So, goes to show you training and diet were an absolute mess. And as you can see those pictures, the one on the left was a picture my friend took of me, and I thought I looked pretty big then as well. Obviously I don't, but thought I looked big. The pic next to that, you can kind of see some bicep there. I'm the one wearing the Kobe Bryant jersey. Rest in peace, Mamba. But you can kind of see some bicep there. Now, I think that's just the way the picture was distorted because I really wasn't that big. And the pic next to it, I'm the one throwing the shuckers. You can kind of see my arm and you can see that I'm skinny. So the point of these pictures is to show you roughly the physique I was working with back then. Like, I guess you could say it's not super skinny like I once was, but for like technically a year. Well, I didn't train the whole year. I took a break from it because I got discouraged with the lack of progress. But these are all the pictures I could find from that year. In my body transformation video I made, the one that's a bit over an hour and a half, I talked about how I didn't have any pics from 2013 or 14. Now that was kind of a lie because I salvaged these from Facebook and I didn't even think to do that at the time. So I guess if you're wondering what I looked like back then, here it is. Now 2014, year 12, I was in year 12 now, my training was getting better in the sense that it was more consistent, but I still didn't really know much about progressive overload and I didn't have much to work with. I had a little bit more because at this point I had a Guy Leach sort of exercise set. So you had this little plastic barbell and you had little plastic plates that went up to 30 kilos. So that's the extent as to what I was working with. Sub 50 kilo total weights. Yeah, so of all the plates and whatnot I had, the most I could lift for any movement was less than 50 kilos. And I used to have like ankle weights and stuff because I used to think that if you put ankle weights on your legs, it'll make your legs grow. I can kind of see the logic here, but it doesn't really work because you're not putting your muscles through the kind of mechanical tension required to grow. Like, I'm sure there's some practical use for them, but in terms of growing big quads, big glutes, big hamstrings, big calves, it's not really the way to go. But what I would do is I would strap these ankle weights around the barbell and lift it for when I was doing stuff like deadlifts. So with all that weight combined, it was still under 50 kilos. So not a lot of progressive overload here either. Like, I would literally overhead press that little plastic barbell thing onto my back to then do squats. So really not ideal. And then obviously lifting sub 50 kilos off the ground. Like, the barbell in an actual gym is probably half the weight of all the total weight I actually had during this year. So that's just to show you that I didn't really know much about, well, I couldn't really get anywhere with training. Ziz montages non-stop, don't care about school. Yeah, all I cared about was just watching Ziz stuff. So this is when I found Ziz. I found him through some meme on Facebook. It was like, swag is for boys, class is for men, and aesthetics is for the gods. And it was a picture of Ziz, and this was the first time I'd ever seen him. And I was like, holy crap, who is this dude? Like, he looks insane. Then I figured out who he was later on, and then just non-stop Ziz montages all year. And that's pretty much all I really cared about. Like, I'd make crappy little Ziz poses and stuff wherever I could. And on my year 12 hoodie, I was almost going to put like Ziz, not like actual Ziz, but like an extension of my surname on the end. And I didn't, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't. But that's how like obsessed I was with him back then. Created and cemented the drive to be a gym rat. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, in 2013, I kind of dropped off training a little bit, but that didn't really happen in 2014. Like, all I cared about was gym. Like, I didn't care about my school, like, at all. Like, I mentioned it in one of my other videos, but I actually dropped my accounting year 12 subject to go do an easier subject with my friend at an all-girls school because, if I drop accounting, that's less study I have to do, which means that's more gym time I have. And for those of you who don't know, I am an accountant now. So funny how that all panned out. So training, starting to learn compounds. Yeah, I was starting to learn roughly what they are. And I learned that through one of Ziz's videos. Like, I'd squat and deadlift. Now, I had to bench like on the floor. Like, I had to literally use pieces of wood to angle at a weird incline, lift that barbell up over that wood and then go and press it. Like, it was a very weird setup, but I didn't even have a bench back then. So this is what I was working with. But it just goes to show the dedication and drive I had. Like, I didn't have access to a gym. I had not the best home equipment, but I did the best with what I was given. Bro split. So yeah, I was just training every muscle group once a week. Now, I'll elaborate on this again later in the video, but boys, it's better to actually train your muscles twice a week. Obviously, space them out about 48 to 72 hours after you've worked out. Sometimes 96 hours is also fine. Obviously, if you do more, that's not really going to hurt, but if you want to optimize things, probably space it 2 to 3 days apart, probably 3 days apart, because that's the generally accepted time frame of letting your muscles heal. And it's also got something to do with muscle protein synthesis spikes. But the problem is I've seen conflicting research that shows if you train a muscle, 24 or 36 hours after it, it doesn't quite spike back up again, or it just interferes with it. But like I've read through it, but all you really need to know is just space it out about 48 to 72 hours after you've trained that muscle group, and you can't really go wrong. Now, volume, I don't know, did 3 rounds of exercises. So I used to think 3 sets meant 3 rounds, which is really dumb because I would do 3 actual sets, do other exercises, then come back and then do another 3 sets again. So I don't know what I thought sets were back then, but the volume was like all over the shop. So yeah, I was technically doing more volume than what I needed, but because the intensity wasn't there, because obviously I couldn't lift much, the progress didn't really get too far. Nutrition, maybe 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Maybe I knew about this then, but I'm not 100% sure. I remember the most effort I made to get extra protein in was taking some boiled eggs to school once, and then one of the teachers made a Popeye joke because, Popeye was the gym thing back when he was growing up. And I'm like, haha, yeah, funny. But yeah, diet was just not here this year either. Like I remember ducking out to Macca's towards like the end of one of our school days. So I don't know if everyone else has this, but every Wednesday, periods 5 and 6, for my school at least, it was like a spare. So what most of us high school boys would do is we would duck down to the local Macca's and snack on some Big Macs and fries and triple cheeseburgers and whatnot. So yeah, nutrition wasn't there either. Fats and carbs, yeah, had really no idea about that either back then. So, that goes to further show how I didn't really know anything about nutrition either. I remember watching one of Ziz's videos and he said that if you're not dieting, you may as well not be training or something along those lines. And I kind of got triggered by that. I was like, dieting's for fat people. You don't need to diet if you're skinny like me, it's just so wrong. It's just not correct at all. And I was also getting fat anyway, so I don't know what I was talking about with the I'm skinny, I don't need to diet part. Gym knowledge came from Ziz, Buff Dudes, Bro Science. So these were the 3 main sort of sources of fitness information that I had back then. Now, Ziz had some good information, but most of his videos were just him trolling, so it was more an entertainment / motivational source for me as opposed to an educational one. I'd seen some Buff Dudes videos. They were pretty big back in 2014. I don't really know if they are now. I don't believe they are. I think they still got a decent amount of viewership, but they were a much bigger deal back then. So they'd basically, like, their purpose for me was to show me how to do some certain exercises. So I guess that kind of helped, but the problem is because I didn't have a proper barbell size, I couldn't really replicate the form properly because the barbell just obviously wasn't the same length. So you can't really copy their correct form because they're using that form on a regular barbell. And Bro Science, so I found Bro Science obviously was a YouTube recommendation, and he's obviously for comedic purposes, but the problem is I would actually listen to some of the stuff he said, even though like he obviously knows what's right, but he was using that as like a joke. But the problem is because I was new to the whole thing, I didn't know what was a joke and what wasn't. I remember one of his videos, he was dissing people who counted macros, and I was like, yeah, that sounds so dumb, I didn't even know what that is. Obviously, because I didn't know what fats and carbs were. And then he had a hilarious video on skipping leg day, and I would kind of do the same. Like, even though I would obviously be squatting less than 50 kilos, I still hated it back then. And I'd be like, oh, I had a rough day at rough day at school. I'm kind of tired. oh, it's 8 o'clock because I've been laying in my bed watching Ziz for too long. Now it's too late to do legs. So I just find any excuse to skip them because, once again, I'm taking a comedy channel as fitness advice. So yeah, so dumb. But that basically rounds out the summary of 2014 for me. So these two pictures here, the circled one on the left is to show you me. Now I showed this because I guess you can kind of see I've got sort of broad shoulders here. Maybe, I don't know if I'm the only one who sees it. And yeah, that's at Froyo. That doesn't really exist where I live anymore. Sad times. It was like a self-serve frozen ice cream and lollies place. It was really good. And that's me with a bunch of the girls from that class I said I picked up instead of doing accounting. So again, funny how that eventually panned out for me. And then the one on the right was me with my sort of girlfriend, not really. But look at that t-shirt. Like the buttons are almost coming undone. Not because I'm huge, but because that is an extra small shirt. Because the smaller your clothes, the bigger you look, right? Even though I was still kind of small, obviously. I think you can kind of see it in the arm there, but I don't know. These are some pics of me in 2014. And then that's just another pic here of me at some party. You can't really tell because I'm wearing a hoodie, but yeah, these are the only really pictures I have that sort of show my physique in 2014, which is a shame because I had some really good pics to show, as in like how like skinny fat I was. But yeah, I've lost them. I'll make a video eventually if I can find those pics again, but I really don't know where they've gone. 2015, my first year of uni, I finally get to an actual gym. I was so keen to use the cable crossovers and leg press, because I had nothing like that at home. I just couldn't wait to use those. I would take a 7:15, 10:40, and 3:40 bus to town just for gym. Yeah, so I didn't have my license. I was 19 by the time the uni year had finished in 2015. And because I had no uni, I had no reason to go into town. And because I wasn't in town, I had no gym. But I was so dedicated to gym, I would literally take a bus into town, which is about like a 50-minute bus ride from where I live, just for the sole purpose of gym. And then I would just piss away the rest of the day because, hey, at least I got my gym session in. So that's the level of dedication I had. Knowledge, not quite there, but dedication was definitely there. Like the 7:15 bus, there was a bus that came back home and it would have gotten me home around 1 o'clock in the day. So at least I still had half the day left. But the problem is this bus would require me to wake up early. And I wasn't really a fan of that, especially because obviously you'd get pretty tired for your gym session. The 10:40 bus, this bus didn't require me to get up early, but it did require me to wait around town all day until the late bus came, or until Dad could pick me up after work. So I wouldn't get home till about 6 o'clock, 6:30 maybe, if I took the 10:40 bus just for gym. So, I'm only having like an hour and a half gym session at the most during this time period. And I'm using up like several hours of my day. So, not the best return on investment for my time, but once again, dedicated. And the 3:40 bus, the only issue with this bus was it would only give me 50 minutes to gym, and sometimes I just needed about an hour and 10 minutes to get in the exercises I wanted. So, I only had 50 minutes by the time the next bus would, take me back home, and then I couldn't get Dad to pick me up because that would give me even less time. So those were the three choices I had during this time, and I sort of alternated between these, but yeah, I would literally use up my whole day just so I could go to the gym. Good times eating kangaroo and rice other side of university on the waterfront. So where my university is, it's kind of like next to a beach in a way. And at the top of the library, you can look out and you can see the bay, you can see the ocean. And then obviously you go downstairs and you get out of the university and you go across the road. And there's this park thing that overlooks the ocean. I mean, obviously if you turn around, you can see the uni, but yeah, it was just good times just eating kangaroo and rice there. It was just a really fond memory of mine, just sitting there, eating my lunch or eating my snack before my next uni class. You know, I'd already finished gym for the day. It was, yeah, good times. So my training during this time, I was, again, still doing a bro split. I remember researching, or quote researching, going on some forum once, and I saw someone saying, is training twice a week too much? And someone was like, yeah, bro, it's too much. I was like, oh, yeah, bro, yeah, that's too much. Got to only train once a week, you know, don't want to overtrain your muscles. It's such bullcrap. I can't believe that there was this much misinformation back then. You guys have no idea how lucky you are to have such an abundant resource of information that is the internet these days, and all the correct info out there. But yeah, again, only training muscle groups once a week, not ideal. First time touching anything above 50 kilos. Yeah, that was nice to be able to actually lift something over 50 kilos. Progressive overload. Now, I'm not sure I really knew what this was back then still. I would randomly just put on whatever weight I felt like lifting for the day. Like, I definitely wasn't tracking my workouts back then. And I don't actually remember... Like, I remember I made a bit of progress in strength when I first got to the gym, because obviously I never touched anything over 50 kilos, but I'm pretty sure it hit a brick wall really quickly, and it didn't really go anywhere because I basically was just a pump chaser back then. Calorie maintenance. I don't really know why I put this here, to be honest. I definitely didn't know what that was. Protein goals, yes. Now, I did know, you know, the 1 gram per pound of protein per body weight thing back then, but I didn't know about fats and carbs still. I just, you know, ate whatever. As long as I hit my protein goals, that was fine. Like, I would go to MyFitnessPal, check out what a triple cheeseburger would give me in terms of protein, and it would hit, I believe they were 36 grams of protein for one of them, and then a large fries was about 4 grams of protein. So I was like, oh, sweet, look at this Macca's meal, 40 grams of protein, bro, how sick. And I remember the $10 nuggets the 24 nuggets for $10 at KFC promotion that they had back then. I think 24 nuggets worked out to be about 72 grams of protein, and then obviously 72 grams of fat, and probably like 98 grams of carbs from memory. It was around there. I don't think that's the exact number, but it was around there. But, you know, 72 grams of fat for one meal back then, especially because back then I didn't really have that much muscle, so obviously my metabolic rate wasn't super high. All I cared about was, hey, 72 grams of protein for $10, this is a pretty sick deal. So yeah, I knew protein, but I didn't know the other 2 macronutrients, so, you know, I was getting there, but not quite. Keto. I did keto as my first cut because in one of Ziz's videos he said that he did keto, so I'm like, yep, good enough for me. Keto, I'm not a fan. It doesn't personally work for me. I know it's worked for thousands of other people, but for me personally, I don't like it, because obviously you don't go on keto for the rest of your life unless it's a health reason, but those are few and far between. Like, if you go on keto to lose weight, eventually you'll jump back off keto, because I seriously doubt you're never going to have more than 4 bits of bread on the same day ever again. You're never going to have a pizza again. Like, I doubt that. So the idea is to obviously make a diet sustainable and have it incorporated into your current lifestyle. But I did go from 83 kilos to 77 kilos in 1 month. I got pretty weak as a result of it, because that was just too much weight too quick. Now, it wasn't necessarily the keto that did that, it was the calorie deficit that did that, but I didn't know what that was back then. So that's basically a summary of my 2015. And on this slide, these are some pictures from what I looked like back then, but these pictures are also on my bodybuilding transformation one, so you can pause and check it out, but I'm not going to talk over it because I've already spoken enough about 2015 as it is. So 2016, I'm in my second year of university. I did 3 units in trimester 1, 4 units in trimester 2. I passed 2 units in trimester 1, and I passed 1 unit in trimester 2, so had a pretty bad year in terms of my studies. But this was still when I didn't really care too much about, you know, uni and stuff. Like, I cared in the first year because the novelty of going to university. Like, I was the first person on my dad's side of the family to ever actually go to a university, so felt pretty privileged to do that. And just the whole novelty of being a uni student, like I just enjoyed it, but it wore off in the second year. But anyway, no license until late September, so unless I went to uni, I wasn't really going to the gym, unless I was doing what I said I was doing before, where I would take a bus in and then just have it eat up my whole day. So I would always go to the one gym because it was closest to uni, and then the bus would lead me pretty close towards the uni. But when I got my license, I was like, oh, how am I going to go to this gym now? Because it's like smack bang in the middle of the shopping plaza. So I'd have to fork out a lot of money for parking, or I'd have a time limit if I wanted to use up the free parking. So I was like, oh damn, this is going to be a bit of a hassle. But after I got my license, shortly after that, I just got invited to my friend's place for something. So I was on my way to her house, and I forgot where she lived, or I forgot to actually put the directions in on the map, which was kind of dumb. So I decided I'd make a pit stop at some shopping plaza that I knew was vaguely around the area, but I'd never actually been here much in my whole life. I just sort of knew it was around this particular area. So I pulled in for a pit stop. I think I got something to eat or something, and pulled up the maps. And I look up, and there's an Anytime Fitness sign staring right at me. And I was like, oh, this is so much closer to my house. It's so much closer by 10 minutes. So it's still far away, but that's a lot of time when you have to drive up and back every day for gym. But I was like, there's no parking limit here. The parking's free, and the gym's right in front of me. Sweet. I guess I've just found my new gym. So I moved gyms, and I have so many fond memories at this particular gym because this gym is where I made most of my gains, but we'll talk about that later. So as for my training this year, I was doing a 3-day-a-week split because I found Kino Body, and he trained 3 times a week, and I was like, I want to look like him because he looks pretty sick. So if I train like him, I'll look like him, but that's not how it works. Everyone's going to look different. There's 3 factors that play into how you look: how big your muscles are, how little fat you have on your body, and your genetic structure. So if you look at any of the top bodybuilders or any of the fitness influencers, all their physiques look good, but they all look different because of their genetic structure. It's not like one of them's found some secret way to train and the others haven't figured it out, but they figured out another way. No, you make your muscles bigger, you cut the fat down, and then you work with the genetic structure you're given. So I didn't know that back then. I just assumed, well, someone trains like this way, then I'll look exactly like them. So that's why I was training 3 days a week. And again, it's also elaborated in that bodybuilding transformation video. I was in a calorie deficit all year because I did some photo shoot and I looked fat in it. So I cut for most of the year. I went from about 86 kilos to 73 kilos in 4-ish months. Maybe it was 5. I don't think it was 6 because the photo shoot was in April. And I know in October, I definitely stopped cutting back then because that was when I had exams. And I remember I'd eat a lot of junk around that time period. So it was 4 to 5 months. So most of the year, not only am I not training that much, but I'm also not eating that much. So as you can imagine, I didn't really grow that much this year either. At the start of the year, I couldn't even do 1 pull-up, and I could do about 3 chin-ups just because of the extra strength I had when I used a supinated grip as opposed to a pronated grip. Now it's vice versa. I can pull up more than I can chin up, but at the end of the year, I was able to do 4 reps of a 28.75 kilo weighted chin up. Now, obviously I did lose weight, so maybe this wasn't as impressive, but it's still pretty decent nonetheless. And finally, would you look at that, progressive overload and calorie knowledge acquired. So I finally realized what these 2 things were. So, obviously I didn't eat at a calorie surplus most of the year, but at least I knew the concept of calories in versus calories out. So at least I had the tools there in place to actually do something with it now. And intermittent fasting, I learned about this. This is a pretty good trick for losing weight. Basically, it's where you just have a certain time period where you don't eat. Some people think there's benefits to it, but I don't think the benefits are realized unless you do multiple day fasts in a row. not, 16 or 20 hours or whatever it is. Some people say they have better mental focus when they do this. I don't. I just have worse because I'm hungry. But it's a good trick to lose weight. Like if you can only eat for like 8 hours of the day, you're a lot less likely to go over your calories than you are if you have like a 16-hour eating window. It's the same as like a budget. If you don't spend any money from Wednesday to Friday, you're a lot more likely to spend less money than you are if you didn't have that self-imposed rule. I hope that analogy makes sense, but what I'm getting at is there's nothing magic about fasting. It's just a good tool to help you lose weight. So these are some pictures of me this year. You can see the side-by-side pictures, obviously same lighting, same bathroom, same shorts. The one on the left was in April, and then the one on the right, I think it was in November, but I can't be certain because where I salvaged this image from, it had no like date stamp on it, so I can't be sure. But I know it was definitely around November, December-ish. The top pic where I look kind of good with the OKC hoodie in the back, that was around November-ish because you can tell I actually look kind of decent. That was after a pretty big cut and a couple of months into a proper bulk. And then the pic at the bottom, July to August, you could tell I'd cut a little bit too far. I look a little bit emaciated, but hey, part of the learning process. Now, 2017, life situation, third year of uni, I did a study abroad tour, a major setback. I'll link the video here where I talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it here because I'll go on a tangent for 10 minutes, but basically had a pretty big setback in terms of my studies and my career. And that kind of prompted me to really take gym seriously because I was like, well, if I'm going to be a dumbass, at least I'll be like shredded. I can't be a dumbass who looks crap. That's just a crappy combination to be, you know what I mean? Gold Coast trip, Perth trip, Denmark trip. Yeah, I had a few trips this year. So obviously I didn't have as much of a structured routine as I would like, but it's this thing called life where things happen. So yeah, not ideal training for some of the year. Woolies work is fun. Yeah, I really started to enjoy my job at this time. And I guess that's relevant to gym because I would pick up more shifts, which means I would be getting in more steps because the Woolies job is quite active. You're on your feet and you're moving a lot. And being active increases your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. Basically what this is it's calories you burn from stuff that's not actually exercise. So I don't know if anyone else has this or not, but when I used to go shopping with, your mum and your auntie or like a girlfriend or whatever, you'd be quite tired at the end of the day because you're doing a lot of walking around and moving. So I guess it's the same sort of concept. But the point is I was burning more calories because I was working a bit more, which helped me get shredded later in the year, but you'll see that in the next slide. Change basketball teams. Yeah, I played basketball for most of this sort of time period. I took a bit of a break between 2015 and 2016. Like I played a few games here and there, but in 2017 I changed basketball clubs because the club I was playing for at the time didn't have an under 23s team anymore, and I really just wanted to play under 23s while I still could. So that was kind of a big step because I'd played for this team since like 2008. So, I've been there for like 9 years. It was a pretty big change for me. And we won a basketball championship that season. So basketball championship number 2 because I won a championship in 2011 with my old team. And that was probably the best championship because that was the season I did most of the work. This season I did a bit. Like we won every finals game, like the semi-final and the grand final. We won those games by 8 points and 4 points respectively. And I scored 8 points and 4 points in each of those games. So not to brag, but I was kind of the difference maker. I'm just joking, but not really though. So as for training, 3 times a week in the first trimester since I needed to study. Yeah, so I knew more frequency was better, but I still only trained 3 times a week because I needed the extra study time. But the problem is I didn't really work because the days I had off, I just get lazy. I find I'm more productive after a gym session, which is a little bit weird. So in hindsight, I should have gymmed more often, which is what I actually ended up doing in 2018. But yeah, again, training wasn't the best. Diet was, it wasn't as good as it is now. I don't have all the little macronutrient nutritional tidbits that I do now, but at least I knew about protein intake and calories. 3+ hours, squat, bench, pull up every workout, quad set for shoulders, seated machine, plate drivers, lateral raises, rear delt raises. Yeah, so every workout of those 3-day-a-week sessions, I would squat, I would bench, I would do pull-ups. As you can imagine, there's a lot of recovery and warm-up time in between each of those exercises, so ate up a lot of my time. The quad set, so every one of those sessions, the only shoulder work I would do was a seated machine press supersetted with a plate driver, which is where you grab the plate and you basically just twist your arms around. Like I'm doing the movement, obviously you can't see it, but pretend you're like a truck driver as a kid and you're just absolutely spinning the wheel one way or another. So that's what I do after the seated machine press. And then after that, I would do lateral raises. And then after that, I would do rear delt raises, and I do 3 sort of rounds of that. And that's all the shoulder movement I'd have. And then I would just do miscellaneous biceps and triceps. Maybe legs, I really can't remember, but I know that was definitely most of my training back then in the first half of 2017. PPL, that's just push-pull legs. So push is where you work your chest, shoulders, or front of your shoulder, and triceps in one workout. So a sample workout might be, 3 sets of bench press, 3 sets of incline press, 3 sets of dumbbell shoulder press, 3 sets of tricep push downs, and 3 sets of lateral raises. That's probably a very, very generic push workout. A pull workout is your back, your biceps, and your rear delts. So one of those workouts might be something like 3 sets of pull-ups, 3 sets of barbell rows, 3 sets of bicep curls, 3 sets of seated machine row, 3 sets of another bicep movement like hammer curls or something, and then maybe 3 sets of rear delt flies or face pulls or something, if most people actually train their rear delts, which they don't. But that's an example of a pull workout. And legs, obviously a leg workout, so maybe 3 sets of squats, 3 sets of stiff-legged deadlifts, 3 sets of leg press, and 3 sets of a leg curl or something like that, leg extension, one or the other, just something like that. Approximately 12 to 15 total sets for each session. And I would do this 6 days a week, so you do push-pull legs, Monday through to Saturday, and have Sunday off. But, it doesn't really matter which days you do them. It was just easier for me to work out Monday through Friday because I was in town for uni. And then Saturday, I would just keep the routine going. And Sunday, I'd have work at weird times, so it was better if I just didn't gym back then. Found student aesthetics. So he's now known as Marion, but back then he was a student at university, and that's how I sort of found him. He had some video that was recommended. It was top 5 something or other. And basically, I knew everything he said, but he simplified it really well. And if I had only found this particular video earlier, it would have made everything so much easier. And then I kept watching his other videos, and a lot of it was stuff I knew, but it was sort of just putting a lot of the pieces together for me, if that makes sense. I kind of knew about this, I kind of knew about that, but then he would be the missing link to it. And I showed it to my friend, and he's kind of skeptical about all the fitness YouTubers, and he was like, oh my God, this guy's actually good. He actually knows his stuff. And I was like, yeah. So he was a really big help for me back then. And he also did a push-pull legs. And I think he's the one who sort of taught me about compound movements first in the workout, even though I kind of was doing that. So I guess that's an example of him putting the pieces in place. I was already kind of doing it, but now he would tell me why I was doing it. That makes sense. His old videos are a big help. I don't watch him anymore. I think he just more so does the lifestyle vlog type stuff, which I don't really have time for anymore. But he served his purpose and he served it well. So yeah, a lot of his old videos are a goldmine of info, but eventually I'll be putting out the same stuff. So you can go check out his old videos if you want. Alternatively, you can just wait for me to pump them out, or anyone really. You know, I'm not the golden authority in this fitness industry, but anyway, the point I'm getting at is all the info was really starting to fall in place. And especially because he'd also done a cut, so I'd sort of follow some of the tips and tricks he was using in his cuts, especially because he was at uni like me, and he was doing a push-pull legs like me, so it was kind of like an older brother figure in a way. Anyway, moving on. Calorie deficit till exams. So yeah, when I got back from Denmark, I started sort of cutting, and then I got kind of lean before exams, but obviously when you're studying for exams, you're going to snack on lollies and junk. So I'd basically just give in to my cravings whenever I had them. And then I'd give in to my cravings whenever I had them when I was studying for exams. And once exams were over, I'd go back to cutting. And then that's when I got super diced, as you'll see in the next slide. And that's what the hit him again thing is. You hit him again, go back into the deficit. So the pic on the left, that's from the Gold Coast trip. That's in the lobby in the hotel we were staying in. And as you can see, I obviously don't look super diced or anything. And the lighting and shadow looks a little bit weird, but that's because I like shaved the snail trail on my body, but I didn't really shave anywhere else, which is why, you know, I kind of look darker in some spots than the others. And then obviously in all the shredded pics on the right, I had fully shaved my body because I didn't want the hair getting in the way of the aesthetics, bruh. So not much more to say really. Obviously there's a huge difference in the physiques really. Obviously there's different lightings and whatnot, but I'd already gone over the changes I had made in my diet and routine. A lot of it was learning how to cut properly, having a bit of muscle in the first place. Now, the exercises I did for abs during this time, I'd pretty much do 2 or 3 sets after each workout, so that was 6 days a week. And they would include things such as a captain's chair, which is where you sit on this sort of little... I'll put an image on screen now. I don't really know how to describe it, but you basically just you hold your upper body up, and then you swing your legs up. Like, I really don't know how to explain it, but I'll have an image on screen. Hopefully that'll help you out. It's kind of like you're doing hanging leg raises, except you're not hanging off something. You're sort of holding your upper body on this weird little contraption. I'd also do these little things called bench tucks as well. And then I'd also do some decline crunches, but I'll try to avoid them because if you know any of Dr. Stu McGill's work, you'll know that crunches are bad for your spine, but that'll be elaborated eventually. Like, it's not going to kill you to do a couple of crunches here and there, but don't do them like all day, every day. So now we're in 2018 and my life situation. I'm in my 4th year of university, so most people have graduated by now, but as you know, I was a little bit behind the pack, but that's all right. We'll get through it. LA trip, NBA All-Star game. Yeah, so in February, I went to Los Angeles with, I guess you could call him my best friend at the time. Probably still is. I don't really have anyone I label that as, but, you know, anyway, went to Los Angeles. Sole reason was for the 2018 NBA All-Star game, held in Los Angeles, obviously. Did a few other things while we were over there, but just a nice little getaway. I did 3 units in the first trimester of uni, and 2 of these units were corporations law and tax law. So that gives me extra credit for when I was applying to enroll in CPA. Workshops at university. So what this means is during the semester break, the university would hold these sort of workshops, and they were sort of like little mini 1 to 2 hour seminars that were dedicated to, I guess, progressing in your career. So one of them would be how to create your LinkedIn profile. One of them would be how to create your resume. Another one's how to write a cover letter. Another one would be how to network. Another one would be how to do well in job interviews. So these workshops really helped me get ahead in my career. They obviously taught me how to write my resume and create a LinkedIn profile, etc. But these were held during the semester breaks, during the university semesters, obviously. And while most people were sort of sitting at home relaxing, I was still at uni putting in the work. So yeah, this was a really good idea for me because it helped me get ahead. First job interview. Yeah, so the first proper accounting job I'd ever applied for, I got the interview for it. Now, this is normally unheard of in the real world. Normally, it takes you like several attempts before you even get an interview. But because I had all the extra preparation, I was, ahead. And I had to cancel my second ever job interview because I'd applied for 2 of the jobs, and I actually got an interview for both of them, but I accepted the role from the first one before I even had the interview for the second firm. So that was a pretty hot start. Year end, 6 out of 6 exams, 2 units over summer, auditing and accounting and society. So yeah, I passed all 6 exams I took in this year, and I enrolled in the summer semester because the job I had at the time wanted me to graduate ASAP, so that way I could start working full-time ASAP. So I enrolled in the summer semester, so in a way I had kind of done 8 units that whole year, even though the exams for the summer units were in Feb. But the point is I was getting on track with my career. Joined uni club and voted into secretary position. So yeah, I kind of got not really asked, but not really coerced either. I'll elaborate eventually, but basically I got sort of hinted at to join this particular university club, and then they liked me enough, so when they had the annual general meeting, I got voted into the secretary position. So that's another responsibility I had in this year. Started Cert 4 in fitness. So yeah, I also started the Cert 4 in fitness, obviously, alongside doing my accounting degree. So yet another responsibility I had during this time. I started this because my mate and I were sort of thinking about it for a while, and we just took the plunge and enrolled in it. 20-hour contract at Woolies. So I found this little notepad I had from years and years ago the other day, and I sort of wrote down 2018 goals, like the goals I had for that year, and one of them was to get a 20-hour contract at Woolworths, because at the time I had a 15-hour contract and I just wanted 20 just because obviously extra money, but it's just a nice round number, 20. So it was nice to look back on that and to see that I'd achieved some prior goals that I once had. Like now I've got a contract of 18 hours just on the weekends, and I could probably get 22 if I wanted to, if I sign myself up for a weeknight shift, but that's kind of impractical given my current goals and whatnot. But it's funny to look back on your previous goals and see how easy it is for you to smash them now. So step by step we'll all get there. First and only season in under 23's Div 1, dunks every game. So yeah, this was the highest level of basketball I'd ever played. I'd played under 18's Div 1 before. Now that was pretty full on. Like you'd have a lot of guys who could dunk and whatnot, and obviously it was like higher levels of play, but under 23s is a different game because at this point, like under 18s, you had a few sort of, muscular in shape guys, but obviously they were few and far between. But under 23s, like all the good players are like athletes, because you got to think that these are like 20, 21-year-olds, whereas in under 18s, you've got 16, 17-year-olds. There's not really going to be a lot of muscular boys that age, but when you get to 20, 21, there's a fair few more of them around. So it was pretty fun playing in this league because everyone was an athlete, and back in the day, seeing someone dunk would just be insane. But yeah, this was very common. Like I couldn't hold on to the rim, but I could like grab it at this point because Like, I'm not super tall, and it's not like I was doing any serious plyometric training. I'd kind of do some during some of my leg days, but my main goal was just to build muscle. Now, obviously, if you get stronger in like the squat and deadlift, it'll help your vertical leap to an extent. Obviously, going from a 100 kilo squat to a 150 kilo squat is probably going to increase your leap by a bit, but going from 200 to 250 probably isn't going to increase it the same amount, if that makes sense. Like, at that point, you're probably better off doing more specific training. But I was just kind of training and just playing and just hoping my leap would get better, but I never was able to dunk. But like, the point of this was it's just showing another thing I had going on in my life. Now, as for the actual training, I was still doing a push-pull legs. I believe I may have done like a upper-lower push-pull legs, but either way, I was still doing pretty frequent training, and it was pretty similar to what I was doing in late 2017, because if it's not broken, don't fix it. So, you know, if I got pretty ripped off that program, I may as well keep doing it. DUP program, not worth the money. So at this point, daily undulating periodization was becoming a pretty big thing. Now, basically what this is it's where one workout you'll do a certain rep range and another workout you do another rep range. So for example, one workout you might be doing bench press in the 4 to 6 rep range, and then the next workout you're doing bench press in the 8 to 12 rep range. So that's basically all this is. And there's some studies to show that this is more beneficial for muscle growth. I haven't seen much hype around it these days, but it was pretty big back then. So my mate and I were actually talking about this while we were over in LA, and David Lade was hyping up this DUP program of his like for a few months before he released it. Now, I bought it, and then it turns out that he'd basically just resold a program he had previously given out for free. There was this video I watched of him in 2015, and he actually had the same program, or if not very similar, linked for free in the description. So I thought this was a little bit scummy on his part. You know, still respect the guy and all that, but I just thought this was a little bit of a unscrupulous move from his end, but doesn't matter. We'll move on. The point of me bringing that up was because I started doing this DUP thing in my training too, because prior, all of my lifts would be in roughly the same rep range. Like, bench would always be 3 to 7, really. I'd never even considered going anything past 8. But then now with this program, I do like, you know, maybe a 3x8 or a 4x8 for bench press some days. So yeah, I found that it worked pretty well, the whole DUP thing, actually, just switching up the rep ranges. You know, try it for yourself, see how it goes. Packing on some fat, but more muscle. So yeah, just your classic bulk. I really started to notice myself getting a fair bit bigger at this time as well. Like, I was really filling out t-shirts, and you'd go to like university parties and whatnot, and then you'd kind of be the biggest guy there, even though I wasn't super big back then. But you got to think, I'm not doing a health science degree here. I'm doing a commerce degree. So pretty much all the boys in this sort of demographic, you could say, this kind of demographic, they're all like either skinny or they're dad bods. There's no real sort of gym rats. Like, there's a handful of us, but there's not really many. Lots of milk during this bulk. So yeah, one of my other gym friends would talk about how he was doing a GOMAD diet, which is gallon of milk a day. A bit excessive. The gallon is sort of just an arbitrary number, especially because it doesn't take into account your caloric needs, let alone your tolerance of milk. But nonetheless, I was drinking a lot of milk during this bulk, and I found that it really helped. Now, the calories I was eating, I was still having like, you know, a decent surplus, but the surplus was nothing different from the prior year. So I believe the other growth factors and peptides in milk really helped me build muscle a bit quicker. I've touched on it in another video, so I'm not going to go into it here, but basically there's some research to show that milk might actually help you build muscle quicker due to some changes it has on your hormones or something like that. Lots of chocolate too. Yeah, because my non-exercise activity thermogenesis was so high, I was burning a lot of calories just through my lifestyle at this point. So obviously my total daily energy expenditure was quite high. So I could afford to have a lot more calories because I was burning a lot more calories. And I didn't have clean calories like, your classic rice and, well, rice, go-to bulking food, but I didn't have much of this because I literally couldn't eat the amount required to put me in a surplus, so it was easier to just buy a block of chocolate. I don't recommend, but this is just what I did at the time. Solid cut, not as severe. Yeah, so I got pretty lean again, as you'll see in the upcoming slides, but I didn't get as diced as I once did. But this is because I had so much more going on in my life that I couldn't actually have gone through all of my sort of daily routines on a deficit that large, whereas it was easier to do back in 2017 because all I really had was my supermarket job and gym. I didn't have a second accounting job, and I didn't have summer study, and I didn't have a Cert 4 in fitness, and I didn't have, all this other stuff. Extra MISC gym info. So there's nothing that jumps out at my head at the moment, but this year I really learned a lot more about gym. Now, I mean, as I just said, there's nothing that jumps out in my head, but whenever I hear conversations about gym, a bit of knowledge will pop into my head and I can contribute to the conversation there. Or if I see some video of someone talking about some gym tip, some info from deep in my memory banks jumps back out and is like, oh yeah, that's right. Or they'll be like, oh no, that's actually wrong because here and here. And a lot of that stuff I think I learnt in 2018. So yeah, pretty good year for accumulating knowledge for me. So here are some pics around February. As you can see, I'm pretty lean, not as diced as I was a few months prior, but still pretty lean. And here are some pics in December. As you can see, I got slapped on a fair bit more muscle and I'm pretty lean there. So I'm the one wearing the Ben Simmons jersey in that picture with my shirt actually on, if you can believe that. How crazy, I have a shirt on. I don't believe it. And then the guy wearing the Gymshark one's obviously my mate. We met in the study abroad tour we did, and obviously we went to the same uni and we're both gym rats, so we stayed in touch after that. And here's just one last pic from that time period. This was taken in the gym. Lucky it was like empty, so I just whipped my shirt off and took a pic in the... Like, this isn't actually a mirror, this is just like the window, but the lighting when it's really dark obviously treats it like it's a mirror. So, pretty good lighting there, pretty good pump that day. And as you can see, looking pretty thick and juicy. Got some pretty solid abs there, decent bit of arms, decent pecs, and really wide lats. Like, the lats are just flaring out. It's just crazy. So 2019, the biggest year of my whole life, I reckon, based on the amount of stuff I was doing. So 5th and final year of my Bachelor of Commerce degree, self-explanatory. Passed 2 exams late Jan, early Feb. Yeah, the exams were in late January or early February. I can't remember exactly when, but these were the exams for the summer units I was doing. Applied for internship at the Australian Taxation Office and got accepted. So, this is a pretty big deal, from the guy who almost got kicked out of uni to the guy who's getting an internship at the tax office. So another big W in terms of my career. But it's not all good news because I got terminated from my part-time junior accounting role. Elaborate eventually, but basically they really didn't like the fact I took the internship at the ATO. They thought that I was pretty much getting ready to leave. So they kicked me out before probation ended, but oh well. Boxing at Good Life, no jobs open, other Good Life locations do. So what this means is I did some sort of short boxing course. They taught us personal trainers how to box, basically. And I had my heart set on working at the Good Life in my sort of local area. But I was talking to one of the trainers on that day, and she said that they didn't actually have any positions open for any more personal trainers. So I was like, oh crap, where am I going to work after I'm finished with my Cert 4? So I went on Seek and had a look around, and there were other Good Lifes that were like a fair bit away, but they were still Good Lifes. Again, I'll elaborate in another video, but basically I applied to 2 of them, got interviews for both of them, accepted one, and had to turn down the other because they also gave me one. But yeah, I started my journey as a personal trainer in 2019 as well. There's another thing, because I had my heart set on working at Good Life. Like, that was one of my goals and I achieved it. So this was really starting to show me that I can achieve anything I set my mind to, as cheesy as that sounds. But like, I moved basketball teams. If I wanted to move basketball teams, and I did. I wanted to get an internship, and I did. I wanted to get shredded, and I did. I wanted to work at Good Life, and I did. So this time period was really showing me I could achieve whatever I wanted. So accepted role at Good Life, 1 hour from home. Yeah, I pretty much just went over that. Still doing secretary work for university clubs. So you can't really do executive roles for a university club if you're not at university. So by the time I graduated, they had the new annual general meeting. So they moved my secretary position over to someone else. So that kind of worked out all right with the timing and whatnot. But, you know, for a lot of this year, not only was I doing my internship and work and gym and Cert 4 and all this other stuff, but I was also doing secretary work for this university club. Woolies got a squad going on, most social I've ever been. So in 2019, at my Woolworths job, we had like the biggest squad going on that we've ever had in the store. So normally, like, friendship groups there was like a couple in each department maybe, but in this particular year, pretty much half the store was like, we're all friends, and we'd all be at the same parties, we'd all be at the same sort of just random gatherings that someone spontaneously held. We'd all go clubbing in the same club together. For those of you who know all about the grind thing, yeah, I used to go clubbing a bit too. It wasn't every weekend. There was one weekend I went out 3 consecutive weeks in a row, but that was probably as, quote, bad as it got. Like, I haven't clubbed in years now, but, you know, back then I was grinding. Like, clearly I was grinding, if you can, you know, just read everything on screen right now. But I did have my sort of, quote, fun. Like, I really don't regret this time period at all. But I just couldn't see myself doing that these days. But that's just another aspect of this year. Had quite a social club going on. And speaking of Woolies, I had a solid 26-hour contract. So yeah, that's a fair bit of hours for someone who's trying to finish off their degree, as well as doing a Cert 4 and gym and everything else. And I finished that Cert 4 in fitness, so this finished about 2 or 3 months after my Bachelor of Commerce degree finished. So finished one modicum of study and then finished another, so really on a roll at this point. Plenty of job interviews. So after my internship ended, I applied for heaps of just various accounting jobs, and I got an interview for most of them. Maybe about 70% of the jobs I applied for I got interviews for, and the other 30% I think I may have applied too late, or they just were looking for someone with more experience or something like that. But that's a pretty good interview rate for, you know, how many other jobs I'd applied for. So throughout this whole year, I was obviously just going to various job interviews, preparing for them, thinking, oh, maybe this is the job that I'll get. But to no avail until the end of the year, which is the next point. Accepted first full-time role ever, early December. So yeah, one of the interviews I had was actually successful. Well done. And first full-time role ever. So obviously the other job was part-time, and I'd never been full-time at Woolies. I'd done like a full-time week and stuff here and there, but never actually a full-on Monday to Friday full-time job. So that's a pretty big step in my life. Won basketball championship number 3. So yeah, the last season I ever played of basketball, we won a championship against my old team. So how poetic. I finish off my basketball, quote, career by winning a championship against the old team that I left. So bit of an odd fairy tale ending right there. But that was the end of my basketball career. Okay, now we're into training, the exciting stuff that I'm sure most of you were actually here for. Sorry about rambling on about my life, but I feel it's important to bring that up because you see a lot of people talk about their gym journeys, but you only hear about the gym part, you don't hear about the rest of their life. So I'm here to show you that there's more to life than gym for most people. 5 day split hybrid, yeah, so I definitely wasn't doing a push-pull legs at this point because I just couldn't get to the gym 6 days a week because there was some days in my schedule that was so full on that there was literally no time for gym. So 5 days was basically the standard. Sometimes it would be 4 if I was really exhausted, or if I had something on, I'd have to like ditch off a gym sesh to make room for that thing. Usually it was like some sort of social event or something like that. Calorie surplus, lots of milk, somehow training worked well around my routine. So yeah, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I noticed I was growing a fair bit from the extra milk in 2018, so I tried it again in 2019. As you'll see in the upcoming pictures, it seems to have worked. Now obviously it wasn't just the milk, like I was having adequate amount of protein, I was in a calorie surplus, I was training pretty well, and I was recovering as well as I could. Obviously, I couldn't sleep in every day because I had other responsibilities in my life, but I found that the milk did help with that, but it definitely wasn't the sole reason. So before you start thinking, maybe I should just drink milk and I'll just grow muscle, not quite. Got to do everything else right as well. But yeah, so drinking a lot of milk again, and yeah, training worked well around my routine. So you see all that stuff I had going on. Somehow training worked really well. I didn't actually jot down everything I had. Like I don't have like any records of a routine I had during this time, but I've got a pretty good image of what it looked like in my head. Now, if you guys are interested, you can just let me know and I'll maybe do like a throwback 2019, what my schedule looked like back then, if you want. But if you don't want, then I won't do it, obviously. But yeah, despite everything going on, I was still training. Extra nutritional knowledge, Stan Efferding plus Power Effect, David Lade and Dylan McKenna. So this was when I really started to learn the sort of little nuances about nutrition. Like I learned more of it in 2020, but I learned a lot from Stan Efferding during this time period because I don't remember how I found him, but there was a lot of hype around this thing called a vertical diet back then. And I think in one video, someone had mentioned Stan Efferding. So I was like, maybe those two are correlated. So I typed in Stan Efferding vertical diet, and then I found some good videos. But then I eventually stumbled across this video series called Rhino's Rants, and it was basically where Stan Efferding is talking in his car while he's driving, and he's just dropping just absolute bombs of knowledge. They're so good. I'll link it if I can remember, but if not, just Google Rhino Rants Stan Efferding and there'll be a playlist of about 20 plus videos, and they're just fantastic bits of information. I remember watching these, or like listening to these while I was eating my red meat and rice while I was playing that Spyro Reignited trilogy that came out during this time period. So that's got nothing to do with gym really, but it's just a fond memory of mine. Just eating vertical, listening to Stan Efferding and just playing games during some lull periods I had in my life. So Power Effect, this was something that David Lade and Dylan McKenna had put together. David Lade left shortly after, I don't really know why, but it was a nice little community we had. There were still some of the boys I met in that group that I still sort of chat to here and there to this day. And it's crazy, it was like, the main thing I got from this was the friends I made through this. Like, I bought one of the programs, right? And it was like $55. And the reason I bought this program was just so I could see if I was kind of on the right track with what my programming was like. So like, I thought I had a pretty good foundational knowledge of what a workout routine should look like. So then I bought one of theirs. I was like, well, maybe if I buy this, it'll like give me some pointers as to what I need to improve on with my workout routines, or if I'm on the right track. Now, I know that these days that there's a few main factors that play into what a good workout routine is, and everyone's workout routine will look different, which will be elaborated on. But I really didn't even follow that routine because it just really didn't have anything that was useful. Like, in my opinion, the workout routine I'd put together was better, but the point is, the main thing I got out of this paying for this Power Effect thing was the sort of community I got around it. So it's just some other gym thing that happened during this year. Now, no compound movements later in the year at Good Life too long. So when I was starting to be a personal trainer, my routine was so inconsistent, and I had like the smallest gaps between clients and prospects and whatnot. So I didn't actually have time to do my proper routine. So I'd basically just do sort of pump work, and I would completely ditch compound movements because they took too long to warm up for. And I really started to regress in my physique as a result, which will be elaborated in the following slides. So these are some pics of what I looked like in 2019. As you can see, pretty lean and athletic. And these are some pics from towards the middle of the year. So I'd put on a bit more fat, but I've got a lot more muscle on me. So again, the bulk's working. And then these two pics are from later in the year. Now, look, I kind of chose some pretty good pics, but I have regressed in these physiques here, if that makes sense. I have regressed in these two pictures. Now, the reason it doesn't look too bad is because, one, there's good lighting in both of these pics, and two, they were both after a solid pump. And three, I was 75 kilos at this point because I'd done a pretty hard cut just because I wasn't training as much. And I was like, if I keep this caloric intake, I'm going to just look skinny fat. So at the very worst, I should just drop more muscle in exchange for dropping even more fat. So that's why I don't look too bad. I was 75 kilos in both of these pics, and the leanest I got in 2018, I was 78 kilos. So I was heavier and I looked better this time a year ago. So training and diet had really slipped at the 2020, the universal shit year. So 7-day work week, I was working 5 days at that accounting job, and I kept my Woolies contract of working the weekends and working Tuesday night. I resigned from Good Life because it was just getting too much, like working all day at an office and then driving an hour to a gym to train a couple of people, then drive all the way back home just to do it all again the next morning. It was just getting too much. Like nowadays I could probably do that, but you've got to build up a tolerance to, working that much. Heaps of BAS returns. So that's business activity statement. It's like a GST thing here in Australia. It's like a tax reporting thing for businesses. I'm not going to elaborate because, I don't want to bore you, but that's what I had going on at this time. COVID drops, accounting stops. So yeah, I lost this job as well. That's 2 jobs in a row. Good job. So yeah, lost this job due to the whole coronavirus thing. So it's a shame, but we'll move on. 2 months of just gym. So I lost this job 18th of March 2020, I believe. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and it was about 4:15 that I got pulled into the office from memory. So I had a home gym at this point. So the gyms were shut, but at least I had a home gym. And I didn't enroll in uni again until about June, July. So from all of April and all of May, I had nothing but gym as my focus. Like I had Woolly shifts, but I had more than enough time to recover from that. Like I'd take naps pretty much every day, and I'd spend a lot of time eating, and I'd sleep like 9 hours. So like I was just recovering so much. So I got pretty strong during this time period, especially because I did mostly just compound movements because that's all I really had. So got pretty strong, got pretty heavy. And yeah, these 2 months in particular was just gym. Enrolled in grad cert AI for business. So that's the uni thing I just mentioned. Resume credit subsidized to make up for lost money during bachelor's, also kill time before crash 4. That's just basically a few reasons why I enrolled in this. So one, extra education is obviously resume credit. This course was also subsidized by the government. So Normally this course costs around $7,500, but the government would have paid off about 6 of it. So like, this is just rough figures off the top of my head. So I only paid about $1,500 for this entire sort of certificate. So that was a pretty sweet gig. And another reason too, that part where I said about make up for lost money during bachelor's. So when you fail a unit at university, you obviously have to re-enroll in it, which means you have to pay for it again. So the amount of money I lost, quote, because I had to pay for doing something again, I was like, well, I'm going to try and make up for that by getting basically free education here. So that's another reason. And that last thing, also kill time before Crash 4. So around the time when I rolled in uni, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time got released, and Crash Bandicoot is arguably my most nostalgic game. So the fact that they made a fourth, like, proper sequel to the third, which was probably my favorite game for a lot of my life, I was like, I just cannot wait for this. And I was like, well, I got a few reasons to enroll in uni, but another one is time will go by, time will just fly by, and before I know it, the game will be out. So yeah, that's another reason I enrolled in the uni course. Obviously, irrespective if the game came out or not, I would still have enrolled in uni, but it was just another selling point. But we'll move on. No more Surf or basketball secretary work. So yeah, I wasn't playing basketball anymore. I wasn't doing a second modicum of study anymore. And I wasn't doing the secretary work for the university club anymore. So in a sense, my workload for the rest of my life was a lot lighter because I didn't have these three aspects, you know, as a part of my life as well anymore. Graduated with a 78.25 WAM. So WAM is weighted average mark. So my average was around 50 to 60 for my bachelor's degree, which is pretty low. So to turn around and graduate with a 78.25 is pretty impressive. That's almost a HD. And the reason it wasn't a HD was because there was one assignment in particular I just couldn't be bothered doing the actual work for, and I got like a 53% or something. If I had just put a bit more effort into that, that would have dragged the average up above 80. So that's a bit annoying, but anyway. Now this also helps because when some employers ask for your academic transcript, I am in trouble because my grades were quite bad for a lot of uni. My grades were quite bad for a lot of university. So they'll look at this and be like, oh, you know, he doesn't have what it takes, which I think is a bit dumb. But anyway, I now can just give them this to show them that, yes, I can do this. I am academically gifted, if you want to call it. But I can work hard, which is that's what I should have said. I can work hard, so I can just use this as an academic transcript if some employers ask for it when I apply for jobs. Enrolled in the Tax Institute, enrolled in CPA. So yeah, I kept going with my studies. I didn't just get like a post-bachelor's degree qualification and call it quits. We'll keep going, we'll keep improving. So enrolled in them. Interviews later in the year. So yeah, I told myself I wasn't really going to apply for any jobs until the end of 2021 because I was so discouraged from losing 2, accounting jobs in a row, basically. But I had recruiters contacting me and I was like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll give this a shot. And then I accepted a role very late in December of 2020, and that's the job I'm still at to this day, and I absolutely love it. So funny how things can work out like that if you just put in the work. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So yeah, in a way I got lucky with this role, but I had prepared for this role and the opportunity arose. So as for my training during this time, when the gyms were actually open towards the start of the year, I was doing a push-pull leg split 6 days a week. So this was after I'd left Good Life, because when I was at Good Life, I couldn't do a push-pull legs because one of the nights I was at my supermarket job and the other 6 nights were sort of like free, but a lot of those nights I'd be at Good Life, but you can't do a push-pull legs if you're training someone else. And then I'm not going to stay till midnight to do a gym session, drive an hour home, have a shower, and get 3 hours sleep before my office job, you know what I mean? There's a good way to fall asleep. When I resigned from Good Life, I went back to a push-pull leg split. My saving grace, my bread and butter, my favorite workout routine. So Monday I do legs, Tuesday I'd work at the supermarket, Wednesday would be push, Thursday would be pull, Friday would be legs again, Saturday would be push, and Sunday would be pull. And that's how the routine would go for a few months. But it was very low volume, so my workouts were an hour to an hour and a half, which is quite long for some people, but for me, my workouts are normally about 2 hours. So the fact that none of my workouts were more longer than an hour and a half, and like I said, some of them were even an hour, so there wasn't a lot of volume. And the main reason was I was just getting used to the whole 7-day-a-week work routine. Now, I'd grinded 7 days a week in the past before, like ever since maybe like 2018, every single day I was either working, I was studying, or I was at gym or something like that. But I never had like designated wake up times and like an obligation to be at work. It was kind of like I'll go to the gym whenever I want and I'll do study whenever I want. And my woolly shifts are usually later in the day so I can sleep in type thing. But yeah, I was sort of just getting used to the, I guess, quote, lack of sleep. Like I was still making sure I went to bed on time and all that, but you know, waking up to an alarm is not the same thing as waking up naturally. So I was just getting used to that. Calories, first time in years not tracking a thing. So yeah, I tracked my calories. Like I'd have a little notepad. Like I didn't actually use MyFitnessPal, believe it or not. I would like check the calories on the packaging and weigh the food and then plug it in after I'd finished eating the food. And I'd stopped doing that at this time because I was just focused on my work and I just couldn't be bothered really at this point in time, even though it doesn't take a lot of effort. But I guess there was a little bit of mental fatigue working 7 days a week and working, you know, as an accountant now. I was just sort of getting used to the whole routine. I didn't want to be plugging in numbers on my phone for my calories as well as all the Excel spreadsheets and whatnot in my job. But I could still eyeball things, so I had a rough gauge of, you know, how many calories I had. Some people are like, do you need to count calories to gain muscle and lose fat? No, you don't, but it helps. It's kind of like when you're driving down the highway. Do you have to look at your speedometer to go the speed limit? No, you don't, but it does help give you a gauge of where you're at. Drink milk after gym. Yeah, after the gym, I would go down to the local supermarket near the area and I would just buy a bottle of milk and just drink that on the way home. Yeah, it was funny. Looked bad until April. So yeah, I kind of looked like a weird skinny fat hybrid until April when I started to like regain a lot of the lost muscle I had, which didn't make me look as fat and it made me look like a little bit buff. So it wasn't, you know, I didn't look the best, but I didn't look bad. Like I didn't have that skinny fat look. 2-a-day gym routines. So yeah, for that 2-month period where I had nothing but gym, sometimes I would literally do like 40 to 50 minutes of arms, like after breakfast. And then later that night after I like done nothing for the afternoon and had a nap and all that, after that, I would go back into the home gym. And then do some compound movements. Like, for example, I'd do, arms, like I just said, and then I'd go back and do upper, lower, like all my benching and rowing and pull-ups and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't do this for too long just because it ate too much of my time, even though I didn't really have anything better to do, but I prefer just training everything all at once. 5,000 to 5,500 calories a day. So yeah, when you're in quarantine, you got nothing better to do. You tend to eat a lot. So like my breakfasts would be like, there'd be 20 grams of butter just on the pan. Like maybe not 20, like maybe 10, 15 grams of butter. The point is there's a lot of butter put on the pan, about 100 grams of bacon, and then 6 whole eggs. And then there'd be some spinach as well. And then there'd be 7 whole bits of wheat bix with 700 mils of full cream milk. That's a bucket load of calories right there. And after I finished that, I'd go for a quick walk. I'd do something else. And then an hour and a half later, I'd drink like this big sort of up and go bottles that they sell at the supermarket. And I'd have some chocolate alongside that. So this is everything I'd eat before midday, let alone everything else for the rest of the day. If you guys want to see what the diet was like, let me know. But yeah, it was crazy. There was a lot of calories there. No wonder I got strong. Blood work. So I got my blood work done just out of curiosity. Everything was on point. Even my vitamin D, which is crazy. Most people don't actually have vitamin D in the appropriate like ranges. The only thing was my cholesterol was high. I was kind of expecting this based on how much like fat I was eating and how much of a surplus I was in. So the doctor was trying to give me some sort of dietary recommendations on to drop cholesterol. I was like, I know how to drop it, I just don't much care at this point. And even then, it's not really shown as being super unhealthy, which I've elaborated in other videos, but I'm not going to elaborate here because this video is way longer than I intended it to be anyway. But yeah, got my blood work done. Strong AF. So yeah, I got really strong. I don't remember my actual numbers, but I was hitting like all-time personal bests on everything. Like, I swear I had 30 kilo weighted chin-ups for like 12 reps. Like, normally I hover around 6 to 8, maybe. But yeah, I got 12. And then I remember one bench press set I did once, I benched 75 kilos for 17 reps. So for reference, at this current day and age, I can do maybe 10. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm a lot lighter and my training is not as good because I've got so much else going on in my life, but that was a lot for me. So yeah, 92.7 kilos are my heaviest. So that's the heaviest I've ever been. No surprise when you're in quarantine and you're eating 5,500 calories a day. Of course, you're going to gain weight. And then weakest cut. So I started cutting quite late because I didn't really cut before the exams, which were in October. And then by the time I got around to actually cutting, it was quite late in the year and I didn't really want to cut past summer, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want to be cutting in like autumn or winter where I can't go to the beach. So yeah, I probably stopped my cut at around 11% body fat, whereas in the past I'd stop it at like 9 or 8. So yeah, the weakest cut I'd ever had. So these are some pics from that time period. As you can see, the one on the left, I look so bad, like compared to what I used to look like. Obviously, if you've seen the other slides, that's what happens when you have other things going on in your life. And then the pics on the right, they're from around somewhere between June and August, I think. As you can see, I got a fair bit of muscle back on me. Well, one of them you can see I got some pretty decent sized arms. And then the other one you can see I got, well, in the Ben Simmons jersey, you can see I got some arms too, but I got some quads as well. So yeah, had grown a little bit. And here are some pics in December. So as you can see, I'm kind of lean. I'm not as ripped as I once was, but you know, in years past, I would have gotten a lot leaner, but I guess this isn't too bad, but obviously not as good as it once was. So 2021, the life situation for this year, 7-day work week again, but now we're back with a vengeance. Now we really know how to do this 7-day work week thing. I finished that tax unit thing I was doing. I started my CPA study. I slowly got immersed into the world of investments. So I can't remember what proctored me to. I think it was just a slow accumulation of hearing it here and there. And I was like, oh, I'll start doing some research. Oh, hang on, this video looks like it's a good idea. Oh, this video prompted me to look at this video here. And that's how the downward spiral into the whole investing world began. But yeah, it started in 2021. The idea to buy land came up after learning about investments. So yeah, obviously you hear people talking about stocks and crypto, and then you hear about real estate, and then you're like, oh, don't need a house. Like, well, what if you buy land? Like, why would you buy land? And you look into it, oh, actually, that's not a bad idea, really. So there was that. Idea for side hustle came up as well in this year. I think, again, this is the same with investments. You slowly, like your first time you heard about it, you're like, nah, that's not for me. And then you slowly start hearing it more and more and more. And then you're like, okay, maybe I'll look into this a bit more. And then eventually you're like, okay, yeah, this is probably for me. Survived past probation and got a promotion and a pay rise. So hooray, I didn't get fired before my probation period like I did with the 2 other jobs. So here in Australia, when you're under probation, your employer can legally fire you for literally no reason, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. After probation, if you were to get fired for no reason, you kind of have a case in court if you want to sue your employer. Now, obviously I'm not a lawyer or anything, but this is just a very, very, very rough overview of how it works. The point is, there's not a damn thing I could have done about getting fired from either of those jobs. Whereas now I've got a bit of a safety net. Not that this current job will, because the culture here is just so much better. You know, the fact that I was able to hold my first ever full-time job was obviously a massive life accomplishment in itself. I could not have seen this coming years and years ago. So yeah, quite a lot of other things, like not as much as 2019, but arguably these things are a lot more important than what was going on in 2019. So although there was less quantity of stuff I had going on, the quality of this stuff was way up. Okay, so as for training, 4-day gym routine, I was doing an upper-lower split. So Tuesday, I would have an upper, which would include arms, and that workout was like 2.5 hours roughly. So Tuesdays were a massive day for 2021. Like I'd get up at like 5:50 to make sure I had my big breakfast and have enough calories for the day. Then by the time I get to gym, it was like 5:45, and then I'd leave about 8:15, go shopping. My friend would be working at the supermarket, which we were both working at, obviously, which is where I go shopping, and we'd talk for like half an hour to 45 minutes. Then by the time I'd get home, it'd be late, have a shower and all that, wind down for bed. Yeah, pretty big days. And then Wednesday was lower. That was about 2 hours. And then Friday and Saturday would be the next upper and lower workout routines. But sometimes I wouldn't be able to do Saturday night because there'd be some gathering or some event of some sort. So I would gym Sunday instead. Point is, 4-day-a-week gym routine, upper lower, works pretty well. No complaints from me. I personally don't think it's as good as a push-pull legs, but there's nothing wrong with this routine at all. And again, there's more to life. Like, what am I going to do? Do a push-pull legs routine and fail my studies because I'm at the gym 6 nights a week, which only gives me about 1 night of designated study per week? Like, of course not. Just my opinion. A lot of people think upper lower is best, but the best routine is the one you'll stick to, so just do whatever works for you. Calories not counting, eyeballing. Yeah, so I briefly touched on that before. I just couldn't be bothered counting calories again, but I had a rough idea of where I was at because I'd spent the last several years actually counting calories, so now I sort of knew what was in certain foods. Maintained until March/April, so because I didn't want to get super fat again, and I didn't have faith in myself that I'd be able to actually cut properly if I was working 7 days a week, I decided to not really let myself go too much. So yeah, I just maintained until then, and then I started bulking properly after that. So that 2.5 hour Tuesday session, which is what I basically just spoke about, that's just listing, that little point there is just sort of listing what I did in those routines, so feel free to pause and read. Slowly giving up and going through the motions in July to October. So throughout July to October, I was going to the gym, but I really just wasn't caring much for it because all I cared about was like study and investments and other stuff. Like I really just lost the mojo for gym. Like I was just really going through the motions and just getting it done. Like I wasn't as excited or pumped for gym as I am now, or what I was like in the past. So that's only normal. We all get ruts sometimes, but you just got to keep going, and it comes in waves. Like you're not going to, if you've gone this long being immersed in the whole gym sector, then you're not going to suddenly lose it all. Like it's ingrained into your personality. It's who you are for life. So I thought I'd just mention that because it might be another factor that played into why I didn't look so good towards the end of the year, because not only was training inconsistent because gyms were shut and all that, and home gyms just not the same, and just overall having other stuff going on in life, but for a few of those months I really just wasn't caring about gym, like at all. So weakest cut. So this cut I did for 2021 was even weaker than 2020, but I really just didn't see the point because I wasn't really going to get time for beach anyway, and I'd kind of outgrown the whole flexing on Snapchat and Instagram thing. Like I think I just need an accumulation phase to just put on a lot more muscle, and then in a few years when I can cut down, then I can really start showing off then. if I want to, but point is, I didn't see the point in cutting too much. So this slide's just showing some pics around that time period, the one on the left in January. As you can see, I was kind of lean. So yeah, I was saying before how I didn't get as lean, which is like true. Like I still got lean here, but just not as shredded. So I guess I really have nothing to complain about. The 3 pics on the right were from around March. 2 of them you can see. I had a gym sesh with one of my lady friends and then another one of our friends as well. He was also just coincidentally at the gym at the same time. So yeah, we were just, well, not lady friend in that way, like a friend that's a girl, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, just a gym sesh I had that was just for funsies. I pretty much just got a pump, pretty much. You can see I'm kind of flexing some of the quads there. I did literally 0 legs that day. Normally when I train with some of my like female friends, they always want to do legs, but thank God she wanted to do like upper body. So I was like, hell yeah. Just did nothing but like arm pumps and abs, as you can see in the pictures. And then the picture with the painting in the background, that's me at home. So as you can see, I'm showing off a bit of delt there. I think there's a little bit of pec too, but mainly the pic's just showing off some delt. Here are some pics around July. So this was before I started to kind of fall off the wagon. As you can see, I'm kind of like in decent shape. Obviously this is after a pump and whatnot. And the pic on the right was me filming myself doing Penlay rows for some gym session I was doing. So this is when I started to have the whole side hustle idea. So I basically just filmed like this upper workout sesh. But as you can see, there's pretty good lat development there. And then obviously the pic on the left, I'm pulling up the shorts so you can see some of the leg gains. Nothing massive, but you know, a little bit athletic. You can tell I actually do legs, but you can tell I can't squat like 150 kilos or anything. And then obviously just flexing some pecs and shoulders, arms, abs, not much else to say. And here are some pics towards the end of the year. So pic on the left was from some hotel room in Crown in Melbourne, which I was staying there with my family at the time. As you can see, like I don't look too bad, but you can tell I've got a bit of fat on me, which is obvious because I'm literally hiding my stomach. But there's some pecs I kept. There's a decent bit of arms as well, some abs because I'm not super fat, but I'm not super shredded either. And then the pic on the right, it's just me in my bedroom. I just took that pic, I was just sending it to someone and I thought my arm looked pretty big there, so I just thought I'd chuck that here anyway. But yeah, just some pics from December. So 2022, at the time of recording, it's around the middle of February, so obviously plenty of year left, but as it stands, still working 7 days a week, and I'm starting the CPA semester again, and I'm doing Australia taxation, so again, another pretty tricky unit, a lot to know, so got to knuckle down and do some study. I've got financial reporting next semester, so the feedback I've gotten is that that's one of the hardest, if not the hardest subject, so that'll be fun, won't it? General career progress, so yeah, obviously I'm learning more stuff at my work, progressing in my role, just, you know, stuff that's outside the scope of this video. Extra investment info, yeah, I'm still learning about investments. If you've seen some of my other videos on like the diversified grind, I'm always just slowly learning, slowly developing in one aspect or another. And then there's also side hustle focus. So yeah, I've put a lot more effort into the side hustle in this year than I have in the year before. But that's because now I got a rough idea of how I actually want to make these videos and my topics and whatnot. So 2022 is basically just doing the same good stuff I was doing in 2021, basically. So I just got to use these next few years to build on everything I'm working on at the moment. So as for training, I got a 5-day gym routine. I have like an arm focus. So I have a designated arm day, and one of my other gym sessions, it's like an upper/arm day, but there's more arms in it than upper movements, which is not what I do in years past because my arms are lagging, I feel, compared to the rest of my body. So when I get super lean, I look like I got pretty decent pecs and pretty good lats, but my arms just look a lot smaller than they should be. And that's just because I haven't given arms the amount of attention they really deserved in years past. I've basically just given that all to, you know, quads, pecs, and back, really. So, yeah, got a bit of an arm focus in my gym routine this time. And also, arms is just easier. So, as you can imagine, I'm not constantly like exhausted or anything, but I'm definitely not 100% fully recovered day in, day out because of all the stuff I have to do, which is fine. But I can't obviously gym to the same extent that I once did. So if I come in and do an arm workout, that's a lot easier to push through and a lot easier to psych myself up for than like a leg day or an upper day, if that makes sense. So not only am I doing arms because they need the attention, but it's also just because it's a more practical and easy routine for me to follow at this point in time. Slightly above maintenance calories, so yeah, I don't intend on bulking too hard just because if I keep this sort of weak cut cycle going, where I don't cut down as lean as I want, eventually I will be fat and I'll be stuck. So I don't want to go too crazy on the surplus because the more weight I gain, like the higher the surplus, the more weight I'll gain, and that means the more weight I have to cut off eventually. So yeah, just slightly above maintenance calories for now. Milk again, yeah, starting to drink a bit more of that. So I've made room for the extra milk calories. So that way I'm not going too over it, but I still get to actually have the milk. More higher quality protein like tuna. Yeah, back in years past, I'd have obviously your protein powders and your meats and whatnot, but a fair bit of my protein would come from like trace protein sources. So like some cereals have protein, but they're not the best quality, you know, just stuff like that. So I'm having stuff like tuna to enhance the overall quality of the protein in my diet. Not fussed about sub 10% body fat. So yeah, I don't really care too much for having like the cheese grater abs I once had. Like I'm fine with having a bit more fat on me at this point in time. Like I'm 25 years old, so there's not really a lot of dudes around who are even in decent shape as it is. But even then, I've just got so much more going on in my life at the moment that even if I was super diced, there'd be no real way for me to, I guess, fully utilize that. Like, it's not like I could go to the beach or anything or go to heaps of parties and take my shirt off and start muzzing or anything. So there's not really a lot of point to me having super shredded abs at the moment anyway. So that's another concept that plays into my training. Doing calisthenics movements, yeah, so I've learned I can do some of this calisthenics stuff recently, so I'm just going to slowly start building on that and doing that at the end of each workout. So this slide's just showing, I guess, some pics of what I look like. As you can see, I mean, obviously this is after an arm day, so there's a pretty decent arm pump, but as you can see, I'm not looking too bad there in terms of arm development. This is going to be interesting to see what I look like towards the end of the year after I've finished this whole year of training with the arm focus. So that was an outline of how my training has evolved throughout the years, which includes some mistakes and lessons that I've learned throughout the whole journey. The original intention was to have all the information towards the end of the video, but I've just realized that this video is probably over an hour already, so I'm going to have another video that's just basically got the basics of what you need to know. And don't worry, it'll be a lot shorter than this video. So I hope this shed a bit more perspective of the whole gym journey. It's not just gym you have to worry about. There's other aspects of your life, but as long as you're consistent and as long as you're doing the right thing, you'll eventually get there. Anyways, I've rambled on for long enough. I'll see you guys in the next video. That is all.